Hey there, welcome back to New Eyes Open. This is the last day of my sprint of showing up every day in January for myself and showing up for you and encouraging you to show up however you're meant to in this season of life. And let's just say I find it incredibly comical and yet not surprising that this year, when I felt the most aligned and like it was true for me that January wasn't actually a new year, new you, restart, refresh time, that I ended up actually doing something new and doing a challenge and all the typical new year type things. So that if that doesn't give you an idea of just the paradox that it is, that life can be whenever you surrender and just go with the flow and show up for whatever you're called to show up for. Sometimes it seems like it's the exact opposite of what you stand for, or what you've said before, which I think is just, God's got jokes, is what I love to say. But yeah, there have been days where it's been challenging. I had a friend yesterday ask, and she actually, I can share this now because she's made it live. My friend Nick, the authentic astrologer, she created a 12th house super conscious rescripting program. And you can check her out on Instagram at the authentic astrologer, is her account. And anyways, back in towards the end of November, she selected a few of us friends that are in a chat group together to go through this superscripting, or super conscious rescripting process. And so that is one of the things that I've been doing in the background. And I will probably do a whole video on this at some point, but let's just say through that process, it became clear to me that clear communication was something that I was being called forward into. And then that started this whole let's look at patterns in the past, which illuminated the fact that I have been called forward to clearly communicate publicly multiple different times throughout my life. And I did not fully step into those. Now, I was communicating publicly and in an improv type of way as a public school teacher, because every single day I was in front of a group of students. I had a captive audience every day. And the particular way that I taught Spanish was through improv interactive storytelling. And we used a method. Originally, it was TPRS, which is total physical response storytelling. And so I would share like a hand gesture. You've probably noticed throughout these videos that I do tend to speak with my hands. Well, when I was teaching, that was because every new vocabulary word, like camina, had a walk is camina in Spanish, had a sign that went with it, some kind of physical response. And that was one way to help kids tie the vocabulary words to their brain. Long story short, it was actually that method later that led to what's now referred to as comprehensible input communication method, or learning acquisition method. And I was one of the first teachers in the United States that was using these methods. And I had to fight for these methods because they went against the grain of the traditional, more grammatical, teach the vocabulary word, teach the grammatical structure, teach, formulaic ways to say the words, blah, blah, blah. I did an interactive storytelling method using the total physical response method of vocabulary acquisition and just language acquisition in general, which was really based on this concept, all comes full circle, that our brains pick up patterns, and we pick up on the patterns that are all around us. And if you think about it, that's how babies learn language. That's how you've learned every lesson you've learned in your life has actually been pattern recognition and acting on it. And so that led into flipping my entire philosophy, that plus a whole lot of child psychology that I had taken at university level, and when I was in a master's program for education, also at that level, seeing how adult education was structured, differently than children's education, in some ways. Just all of that really made me rethink education in general and how kids learn and how they learn naturally, which ultimately, as you've heard me state on this channel, is why I unschool my children. Now they learn every day, and they learn they have such a depth of knowledge because they get to focus on what they're passionate about. And granted, we still learn the same types of subjects, but they get to choose their focus within those subjects. So for example, my youngest loves horses, and for science, she chose horse anatomy. And she has gone so far down that rabbit hole, I can't even tell you. Like, she's studying college level equine anatomy right now, and she has the entire the entire horse skeletal structure and like internal organ structure completely memorized. I can point to it on, a diagram. She knows exactly what the organ or the skeleton, the bone is. See, she's better at it than I am because she's been able to deep dive into it. And that intrinsic motivation is really where I think it's at right now for learning and just moving us forward as civilization. And all that to say, that is part of the reason that I have felt called to show up here, because I do believe part of my own personal soul curriculum, what I'm meant to do here in this world, has to do with communication, and clear communication specifically, which is what came through during this re-scripting process. And so that is why I felt like doing this challenge. And it just happened to align with the Gregorian New Year, the beginning of the calendar New Year. And it's been really fun to see how this is actually getting me comfortable with what I need to be comfortable with in order to be ready to start the new year when I personally feel aligned with it being a new year, which if you've remembered, I've mentioned this is the day after my birthday or the beginning of spring, right around that time frame. So thank you so much if you have joined this channel and stuck around for my rambling and my fumbled words and just this trust and faith process. That was another aspect of it, was I was supposed to show up, hit record, and just trust that a message was gonna flow through, which brings me full circle to what I started this with, my friend Nick, who created this super conscious re-scripting process, or experiment really is what we're calling it. She's the one that asked me last night. She was like, what do you do on days when you sit down and nothing comes through? Or have you had days where you sit down and nothing comes through? And I told her that there have been days when I sit down and as I hit record, I'm like, I have no idea what I'm about to say. And that makes me really nervous, especially as somebody who really has been operating most of my life at a strategic, very logical, analytical, um, you know, just way of going about life. I've almost always had a plan and known what the 10 steps and the 10 sub steps for each of the 10 steps was going to be to get where I wanted to go. And that worked really well until it didn't, which was about 3 years ago. And that's something that moving forward, I'm going to start to talk about a lot more. When the plan or the map that you've been navigating your life with does not work anymore, what do you do? That is what I have been walking through the past 3 years. You could probably even shift that a little earlier than that. It's probably more like the past 6 years, but at least the past 3 years, like solid, have been, oh my gosh, I thought I was going this way. I thought I knew all my steps, and the steps just like crumbled underneath me, and I have no idea what's coming next. And I just have to trust that I'm going to be held through it all. And I have been, in the most beautiful way. It has been the scariest 3 years of my life on one hand, and on the other hand, it has been the most magical and beautiful 3 years of my life. And so if you are in that same process right now of feeling like, the map has disappeared, the steps have shattered underneath you, you don't know what your next step is, welcome. That's what we're going to talk about here moving forward, and at a little bit slower pace. I am going to continue to show up every day and record videos, but I am going to compile them or create I'm going to upload the best version for you. That's what I'm trying to say here. So I'm going to record the video every day, with the same concept, and whichever one turns out the best, that's the one you get. Because honestly, my main goal and the message I believe I'm here to share right now is to let you know you're not alone and help guide you through however I feel called to at the time, however I'm being called to at the time. If you're going through a similar kind of transition to what I went through this past 3 years and what I'm still going through, as you can tell by, clear communication is still showing up as, fumbled words and not quite sure that it all flow through. And part of that's because I'm really excited because I just spent all day working on something that brought me a lot of joy. And so my energy's amped up because of that. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here. And thank you in advance. If you feel like this resonates, if you feel like it's something that would help someone else, I do appreciate your likes, your subscribes, your comments, in order to get this message out to those who might need to hear it. And with that, thanks for sticking around for a month of showing up, you guys, and I hope you have a great weekend. I will see you back next week with one video, not 5. All right. Until then, be well.